What's going on, Tamers? It's me, Guy, hella late on his upload schedule. Now, to be fair, Tokyo Game Show was last weekend, and it only comes around once a year, so I figured, you know what, if this is the weekend to be late, then it's kind of worth it, you know? Anyway, we are on our 4th week of events for the EX05 set over here in Japan and the rest of Asia, and honestly, I'm a bit flabbergasted at how much EX05 Animal Colosseum mattered and shook up the game. If I were a betting man right now, I would have been broke. I knew Garurumon was good, but outside of that, everything else is still showing up. I didn't really have a lot of hope for, you know, the Deva deck or Leomon or Leopardmon or Leviamon really like shaking things up, but I'm dead wrong. To see exactly what I'm talking about, let's take a look at some event results, a couple of key takeaways, and a closer look at some of the decks I topped over the course of the past week. So looking at the event results, I'm pretty sure you're as shocked as I am. You know, first it was Anubismon, then it was Beelstar, now it looks like it's Deva's turn to rise up to ranks. Again, all of these cards coming from the EX5 set means that Animal Colosseum really mattered. It turns out that just hard playing level 5s and having the ability to blast Digivolve off of them isn't that bad. Color me surprised. Kind of circling back around here but Anubismon and Beelstarmon are basically running the show right now as far as the game is concerned. Keep in mind that these Beelstar decks are the ones that are running the lower end Garurumon draw engine, which can draw an insane amount of cards. And we've talked about this before in previous week's episodes. I just this time decided to separate out Garurumon from the actual Beelstar decks that use Garurumon. And then as we drop down to the champion level here, a lot of the hometown favorites that you guys have seen here for a while. Mirage Galgamon, which has seen a huge resurgence with the new Bukamon. We took a look at that last week, so if you want to know more about that deck, take a look at last week's video. Also the Greymon brothers, Shine Greymon and War Greymon, still doing fantastic at the same time. Another nice little surprise for this week is that when you drop down to the rookie level, you see Leviamon start to peer its head out of the water here. It seems like a lot of people are going with some like Leviamon / Anubismon hybrid builds, but I have seen a couple of Leviamon focus decks, and we'll take a look at that a little bit later, so keep watching. Alongside those, we see decks like Alphamon, Machinedramon, and Chaosdramon, and Gamamon, which are all actually getting support from the BT15 set, so it'll be interesting to see how these decks perform once we get our hands on those new cards. And then when we look at the training level here, it's just a host of decks we've seen before, Sanjay with the rest of the EX5 decks. Again, Leomon's here, Leopardmon's here, Garurumon is still here as well. When you separate it out from Beelstarmon, you kind of see that Garurumon has itself fallen off a bit, but I suspect this will change once we get our hands on those new cards from the BT15 set. I'm specifically looking at the secret rare blue metal Garurumon. I think some really cool things to highlight here is, first of all, we got another Sukamon and Edamon deck doing numbers, thank God. It's about time we got another top from these guys. I love this deck to death, but I cannot find a way to make the offense work, so I'm trying to steal somebody's list. Also, the blue aggro deck here is really cool to see. We're definitely gonna take a look at this one as well because I think it's very interesting. This is such a really cool blast from the past that includes a lot of the newer cards to beef up its power. A lot of cards you probably haven't seen in a long time, but they are made relevant again with some of the cards like the new Gomamon, as well as Jellymon, and of course the Digi-Egg, the blue Bukamon. The top end of the deck is pretty straightforward. You're using the BT1 blue Cerberusmon, a guy we haven't seen in a long time, where you trash 3 cards you can unsuspend whenever you attack. And then you close out your turn or the game by hard playing the Cerberusmon Werewolf mode, who, if you have a Cerberusmon on the board, can refund his entire cost. Because it has Rush, it's 1 more attack per game. Some of the other stuff for this deck is also really cool. Again, the Gomamon here, who can infinitely come back every single turn. We also have the level 3 Jellymon with Evade, which makes it really hard or annoying to kill, as well as another Jellymon here who just gives you card draw every single turn. One of the issues with aggro back in the day was that you didn't have a lot of ways to actually get cards into hand to replenish if your board gets wiped, but with the new Jellymon here, that's not a problem anymore. The level 4s in this deck feature some of the oldest cards in the game, including the BT1 secret rare Vidramon here. That's what you see here. This is an alt art, but again, this is one of those guys where if you had a Tamer in play, he could unsuspend whenever he attacked. And because you have the new Bukamon who gives him jamming, he can stick around for a lot longer. Where in the past, 6,000 DP was not enough to survive security swings, now it's no issue. Additionally, you have the Ranamon here who can give yourself jamming and Digivolve off one of your 5 Tamers in the deck. And for some more defensive plays, we have things like the Leomon here who gets blocker, but also when he's destroyed, you get memory and card draw. Also the gold Vidramon here to weaken and stun your opponent's board. And then if your opponent thinks they have you on the back rope, you can use something like Zudomon Ace to sword strip something and send it back to hand on attack. The options for this deck are pretty much what you'd expect. 1 copy of Ice Wall to slow your opponent down, make sure they can't attack as fast as you can. Obligatory memory boosts and training cards to make the deck faster. And then a couple copies of some plugins. I'm kind of surprised to see the plugin D here, just because with the Bukamon jamming is really not an issue. I guess this is just so you can't be blocked. But what I do like is the plug-in A's, which I think are fantastic in getting multiple swings with security attack +1 to really close out the game quickly. And then if you do come across some insurmountable wall, you've got Full Moon Meteor Impact to save the day and be a cheap form of removal. All in all, I think this is a really cool deck. It's also a really super budget-friendly deck, so if you're just hopping into the game, this is pretty cheap to build. I love the idea of going back and taking cards we haven't seen in a long time and actually making them useful and more relevant with some of the new meta stuff there. So with how well Dave's been doing this past week, I had to take a look at some of the lists and see what's changed. But honestly, I think the answer might be the players. The lists themselves aren't really much different from what we took a look at on week 1. The one standout tech that I've seen for this deck is the addition of the Genai Tamer card, which is behind this win rate 60% option card here. And while Genai's on-play effect is pretty much useless for this deck in its entirety, and it's actually kind of painful to bottom deck some of your most useful stuff, when he's on the board, your level 5 Deva in raising is always a threat. Also, I want to say thank you to the folks in the first week's video who pointed out the reason that Mother Reaper is actually in this deck, and that's because if you don't have any Deva cards on board and you don't have a Tamer on the board, then there's no way you can actually play your option cards, and so you need to maybe have some white Digi-Egg in order to actually be able to play your white option cards if you don't have a Deva down. This is where I would normally go into a little bit more depth on the deck itself, but if I'm being honest, I don't have a lot of experience playing Deva, and I don't have a lot of experience playing against Deva. So if you folks in the comments can provide any insight here, I'd love to hear it. So next up is the Leviamon list, and as I took a look at this list, I quickly realized that all purple decks are pretty similar right now, and that is that level 3, level 5 is Garurumon discard engine, and then your level 6s are really what's going to change. In some cases, you actually go to the Garurumon upper end, you can go Beelstar, you can go Beelzemon, and in this case, they opted to go Leviamon. The gameplay for this deck is actually pretty cool. You go aggressive with the Garurumon cards as best you can, and if your opponent is able to put up a defense in some way, then you can rely on your Leviamon cards and the rest of your level 6s, as well as your Lucemon fall down mode to take care of those problems. To make things scarier, this is almost set up as a security control kind of deck where you have 4 copies of the Biting Crush and you have 4 copies of Dead or Alive. A way to bring back one of your Lucemon fall down modes or another level 5 on the board, or if your opponent goes crazy playing Digimon by effects, Anubismon, then you have the option of just dropping a Leviamon once you get your Biting Crush down. I love the idea of the level 5 Dragomon here, forcing your opponent to play something out in case they are trying to play around your Leviamon. You can just force them to do it anyway. It's pretty tough to just hard play Dead or Alive or Biting Crush, and so you have cards like Neodevimon and Lilithmon to help do some of the heavy lifting here, where if your opponent plays a Tamer and you have a Neodevimon on the board, they're basically paying like 6 to 8 memory to get that Tamer down. And then to make matters better, you can use that Neodevimon to go into a Lilithmon, and that way you can get more memory back when you actually play those option cards. It looks a little nasty, but honestly, balance-wise, this deck is pretty well balanced between the offense of the Garurumon engine and the defense of the level 6 cards alongside, the option cards. All this culminates in you trying to check security against this deck being very, very scary. Also keep in mind that in BT15, Leviamon only gets better. So the last list we're going to take a look at this week is going to be Chaos Dramon and Machine Dramon. For folks who've been following along with my BT15 preview series, then you know that the Chaos Dramon and the rest of the machine cards are only getting better with the addition of some of the new SOC cards being released in that set. Going into BT15, I'm actually really excited to build the deck, but I think that it's going to change quite a bit just because some of the new cards are so good that it's kind of hard to ignore them. But that being said, before we actually get to BT15, I kind of want to establish a baseline of what the deck looks like right now, so we can take a look at it in a couple of weeks and see how things have changed. And what you're looking at here is, in my opinion, the most solid version of the list up to date as of EX5. This deck is pretty light on its level 3 cards with a couple copies of the Espimon as well as the couple copies of Dorumon. Just in case you end up digivolving up to change your level 6, then you have these guys' effects and inheritance to help out. The level 4s for this deck are usually just either cheap digivolve cards or cheap level 4s you can just hard play by themselves. Things like the Numamon you see there, as well as cards like Rareamon will also help with card cycling. Additionally, we see 2 copies of the Tankmon, which is just a 1-cost Digivolve, which is nice to just get up the chain as fast as possible. Level 5, we see 15 copies of level 5 cards here, including everything from the starter deck Metal Greymon to things like the Metal Mamamon from the EX1 set, a couple copies of the Metal Greymon who lets you attack unsuspended Digimon, as well as things like Blocker, Security Attack Plus, some fantastic effects in the Metal Tyrannomons to drop a security whenever something's destroyed, and the plus 3000 from Metal Greymon as well. Looking at the level 6s, honestly, I think this is probably the hardest part about building the deck, because once you set your level 6s, that's going to influence how the rest of the deck is made. This one tries to focus on a nice split between the BT11 Machine Dramon and the EX1 Machine Dramon, typically trying to get to your BT11 Machine Dramon, and then when he's destroyed, you can go into your EX1 Machine Dramon to get memory back, plus get a new stack outright. We also see a couple copies of the Chaos Dramon and the Chaos Dramon X Antibody. Once you get super late into the game, then you can close out with the Omegamon or the Omnimon here. Machine Dramon is definitely a deck that is kind of spoiled with really good option cards to choose from, but I love the fact that this deck keeps everything so simple. Just a couple copies of your Black Memory Boost, 4 copies there, and then 3 copies of Attack of the Heavy Mobile Digimon, to just either get something out on board really quickly and keep some offense at the same time, or just to close out the game. And then for tamers, I love the split between the Analog Man and the TIE Tamer, just because Analog Man is going to be your bread and butter, but once you have an Analog Man down, or you've got a Machinedramon with blocker, every time you redirect, you can make that Machinedramon stronger and you can get some card draw off of it. Like I said before, I think this deck is going to evolve quite a bit once BT15 drops, so I just want to establish a baseline here for what Machinedramon looks like now, so we can take a look in a few weeks and see what it looks like then. And so with that, we're going to bring the 4th week of events for Animal Colosseum over here in Japan and Asia to a close. This time next week, we're actually going to have our hands on the BT15 card, so that'll be interesting to see. Keeping in line with how I've done things before, I think that next week we're just going to do a quick recap on the EX5 set as a whole. I think there's a lot to talk about here, outside of just Garurumon and how problematic it may or may not have been. Just one more quick thing before I get out of here. If you are interested in taking a look at some of the BT15 cards and actually what they do, then check out my BT15 preview series. I'm putting up little bits and pieces about the different colors and the different archetypes for that set day by day. It's really quick, really fast, but also really informative. Anyways, folks, I'm gonna get out of here. Before you get out of here, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.